coming at you here. And I'm excited because tonight, this is Thursday night, baby. Thursday night is game day. It's the Showdown slate on DraftKings, and that's what we're going to be covering in this video. We're going to be talking about the Thursday night preview. We've got the Packers, and we've got the Bears in an electrifying matchup. So I'm looking forward to breaking down the slate, guys, for everybody. So you can play in the Showdown slate that's featured on DraftKings, also one on FanDuel. Specifically, I'll be kind of diving specifically into DraftKings. But besides that, let's dive in. I hope that Thursday night football music has got you pumped up, because I know hearing the jingles, hearing those bells has me excited and amped up for this matchup. So, first things first. So, basically, NFL, Thursday night football means it's showdown time. So, what exactly does showdown mean? What is that slate, and how does it kind of differ from the classic mode that you'll most likely find on DraftKings or FanDuel? So, basically, the way the DraftKings Showdown works is it's also called the Captain's Contest, where basically you have a captain slot where a player can earn 1.5 times the amount of DraftKings points that a normal player can earn. But they, at the same price, at the same cost, they actually are more expensive. So they earn 1.5 the amount of points, but they also cost 1.5 the amount. So it's kind of, you got to weigh your differences here. You really want to hit on that captain guy. Whoever that is, you want them to be your higher scoring player, because they're going to have that multiplier effect, which really can help you stand out in these larger scaled GPP matchups. So that's one of the really important things. And for me in particular, I think that the best way is not necessarily, I think initial thinking is, I got to play a quarterback in the captain spot. Quarterback score the most points. But a lot of times what you'll want to find is you actually want to play a receiver, or running back, that are more likely to catch a touchdown from a quarterback. Receiving touchdowns are 6 points, so there's always a chance that a receiver or running back can outscore that quarterback on the same team. So that's why one thing I would do is lean a little bit more towards receiver running back, especially one that catches passes. So in this matchup in particular, one of the guys I really like to look at is actually Aaron Jones. So a lot of people probably be fading Aaron Jones, for one. And I'm talking about, DraftKings has that big showdown slate, $1 million contest. You pay $10, you can win $1 million. It's pretty freaking cool. So what I'm thinking is, hey man, you got to go contrarian a little bit here, and that's why I like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is the lead back on the Green Bay Packers, but people can be a little hesitant about it. Matt LaFleur hasn't necessarily came out and said that, but we've seen him use a lead back before when he decided to finally use Derrick Henry last year. So this is what I'm going to go into the season knowing this knowledge, and I'm going to take advantage of people that may be lower on Aaron Jones, but I'm going to be buying into Aaron Jones. But Matt LaFleur has really stated during this offseason that he really wants to have the offense run through the passing game. During the preseason, Dexter Williams ranked 8th overall in rushing attempts throughout the entire NFL. And if you look at last season, the Packers' run percentage, rushing attempts, runs on 1st and 10 all ranked dead last in the NFL. There's literally nowhere else to go than up at this situation. So I really like Aaron Jones to see a lot of work in this game, and I'm not afraid of this Bears defense. Vic Fangio is gone. That's a big difference, and we've seen this drop off from top defenses every single year. We saw it from Jacksonville last year. When you are that number 1 defense and you fall to number 10 defense overall, there's a significant impact. And it may not seem like a lot, but because the defense was just so good last year, that I'm just not so sure that they can repeat, especially now that they've lost Vic Fangio. And there have been interviews around the league that have been saying, hey, who's the toughest defense you've faced? Vic Fangio. Well, he's gone. So I don't think you should be off Aaron Jones. I think that he's a player that you should definitely play in your lineup for the showdown captain spot. Not necessarily in the captain spot, but in your lineup, because I think he's going to garner a lot of touches. And I actually prefer him over playing the quarterbacks. So the quarterbacks are going to be definitely more chalky, because, again, that's kind of who people will go to. People will kind of stray towards the quarterback position because, hey, they score the most points. But I'm going to say, you want to fade those two quarterbacks, because both of them historically have not played well against these teams. So, and honestly, most people are going to be overhyping this game as a offensive shootout. We're going to see, the new offense of the Packers. We're going to see Trubisky in the year 2 of the Chicago Bears, Matt Nagy system. And I just don't foresee that happening. I think that we need to be a little hesitant to just go back into, hey, it's going to be a shootout. We're going to see tons of action. I don't know if that's the case we see here. One thing to look at here. So in Rodgers' last 3 starts at Chicago, he's averaged just 238 passing yards and just 1 passing touchdown. That's not great. And going back to Trubisky, the Packers defense has improved significantly since last season. Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, recently B.J. Goodson, Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Rashawn Gary. Yes, they do have slow linebackers. That's one thing to point out, and that's why you want to look to guys like Tariq Cohen and Cordarrelle Patterson. That's what I'm talking about. Cordarrelle Patterson is my lock for the captain spot in this matchup. It's a free image, but this is important. I actually put an image of a Patriots here if you're watching this video on YouTube because there is a great example on Twitter of someone breaking down Cordarrelle Patterson and basically why he can expose the Packers defense. And before I get into that too, just one last thing on Trubisky. So Trubisky is now going to be facing Mike Pettin for the second time. Mike Pettin is the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And Pettin is entering his second year. And a lot of times we see the jumps in offenses in second years, but we also see a jump in defenses in their second years under their defensive coordinators. So I'm not so sure we can just bump up the Bears without necessarily bumping up the Packers in the same equal way. And 2 games last year, Trubisky against the Packers, Trubisky averaged just 203 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. He also rushed for a total of 48 yards in those 2 games. So if you do decide to go with the quarterback, which I think that still makes sense, to kind of create that correlation factor, which is a huge thing in Showdown. You kind of want your lineup to correlate and really kind of come up with a storyline for your lineup that you think the game will play out, whether it's a contrarian approach or just, hey, I really think this is going to happen. Build your lineup around a story. Having a receiver catching a pass from the, most likely Trubisky will throw a touchdown. He's got to throw it to somebody, and you'd want that guy in your captain spot. So I prefer to fade Rodgers. I'd fade him in redraft. I'd fade him in the Showdown slate, in DraftKings and FanDuel. But I would definitely prefer Trubisky if I had to pick one of the quarterbacks. But I'm honestly on board of fading both the quarterbacks. I think that you can do that, and I don't think that they will both really have great days. Necessarily, definitely would not put them in the captain spot for sure. But going back to Cordarrelle Patterson, I didn't even think Cordarrelle Patterson was going... I totally forgot he was on the team, honestly. I was looking through the rosters, and if I do that, someone that does this, literally every single day, looking at the lineups, chances are that average Joe Schmo is not going to look at Cordarrelle Patterson at all, or Cordarrelle Patterson. I'm a Patriots fan, so I got to see Cordarrelle Patterson last year, and the big game that he had, I remember it was a huge mess because he got running back eligibility, which I believe on CBS Sports he still actually has running back eligibility. I checked. He exposed the Packers defense because of their slow linebacking core. That's the game that Belichick used him as a running back, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nagy looks at that film and is like, hey, this is something we can use to expose. And it's funny because the Packers defense is one of the rare teams that's actually done a really good job of containing a guy like Tariq Cohen. So Tariq Cohen, is a guy that he's put out as a receiver a lot, but they've already talked about, using him less. But one of the things that I've noticed is, yes, even though Trey Burton is a guy that probably will not end up playing in this game, and I like that fact for running backs to catch more passes, so that's definitely a plus for Tariq Cohen. But one thing I noticed about Tariq Cohen is in the games against the Packers, he was held in check for the most part. He didn't really produce a lot of fantasy points in those 2 games. They were really able to kind of keep him contained, which is why I think that adding another element, the Cordarrelle Patterson effect, who has not played a single snap in the preseason because he has a significant role in this offense. We don't know what this role is going to be. He could do a lot of different things, but we do know that he's a big play guy. He makes plays on special teams. He could get end arounds and screens and doing those things like that. The corner, one of the corners on the Packers also is dealing with an injury. So there's a chance that Kevin King, who is the cornerback, the second corner behind Jair Alexander on the Packers, is going to see limited snaps. So there's a chance that Cordarrelle Patterson could line up against the backup. Oh, who's the backup there? It's Tramon Williams, 36 years old. I think Cordarrelle Patterson can beat him on the outside. So Cordarrelle Patterson can catch a long pass. He can do an end around. He can catch a screen pass. He can catch, getting handoffs from the backfield. He could get the ball in a lot of different ways, and he's a big big threat play waiting to happen. So that's the guy I really like to have in my captain spot because it's going to be really contrarian. Probably going to be like one of less than 1% owned, but I think he's a good play. I would not play him in a standard redraft league. I definitely would not do that. It's a little too rich for my blood, but even with Anthony Miller playing as well, I'm still not. I can't trust Anthony Miller because I think that he's really touchdown dependent, and I don't envision there being a lot of touchdowns. I don't envision this being a really large scale offensive shootout. So I'm not really on the Anthony Miller train there as well. But that's the thing. I think if you really want to take down this GDP, I think it's going to go through Cordero Patterson. I really strongly think that that's who I'm going to play. So we'll definitely see. But I think that it makes a lot of sense. We saw what he did last year against the Packers when he was using a hybrid running back role. And maybe Nagy has looked at that film. It's a copycat league, but he's like, hey, wow, this worked really well. And we know the Packers have really slow linebackers. So that's one thing I definitely like to expose. I definitely do think, though, that it'll either be Patterson or Tariq Cohen that will kind of have a blow-up play in this game against the linebacker. I think that they're going to finally get that mismatch that they want. It's going to get lined up somehow. But, for my stakes, I'm hoping that it's going to be Cordero Patterson. And then also that in case, if you do have Tariq Cohen in a redraft league, I would start him for that reason. Just because he does have that higher upside in case that, hey, adding this extra dynamic doesn't let Mike Pettin take Tariq Cohen away as easily as he's done in the past. Again, and also, with no Trey Burton, we see a trickle effect with more running back targets in the passing game. So that's something that I really like to see from the Bears running backs there as well. Montgomery, I'm just gonna fade because he's gonna be super chalky. Everyone's gonna want to play him, and I do think the Packers defense is more improved. I have not really been on the David Montgomery train this season, so I'm kind of fading him for that reason. And I do like the more primary passing catch backs specifically. Not to say that Montgomery can't catch passes, but I do like the guys that are really more dynamic in the passing game as opposed to Montgomery, who he can catch passes. He's not Jordan Howard, which is good, but I think I want a little bit more explosiveness behind the guy that I'm going to be starting in this particular lineup, especially because it is PPR. And then one last thing, too, before jumping again to the next subject. So Aaron Jones also, the Bears defense, Jamal Williams played the Bears defense last season, and he was fine. He scored, he had rushed for 55 yards, he had 4 receptions for 42 yards. He had a solid performance. So, I'm not fading Aaron Jones in any way, shape, or form, whether it's in redraft. I think he's a fine play, RB2 in redraft, or, a regular play in the standard or in Showdown. So I don't think that he's a guy that you should fade at all. And one thing, too, about Aaron Jones that's very interesting is I actually looked at his injury history. And basically, so in 2017, he saw his first NFL action was basically against the Chicago Bears. He came in when Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams were injured. And then later that season, he was hurt in Week 10 against the Bears and then did not play really for the rest of the season. And then 2018, he got hurt again last season against, who do you think? The Bears. So it's weird because he's been hurt both times in late matchups against the Bears. But this season, hey, he's opening up against the Bears. So, call it taboo or whatever. But when Aaron Jones is fresh and is healthy, he can take down these Bears. But then toward the end of the season, when he has to play the Bears again, that's when you want to fade Aaron Jones. So that's where I'm going with the running back position. So we've talked quarterbacks. We've talked running backs. We've talked a little bit of the receivers. Specifically, one of the more receivers, so the two top guys are Davante Adams and Allen Robinson. I think if you're kind of approaching this showdown with a kind of a cash game approach, Davante Adams is pretty much a lock. I don't think that he's going to be a bad play at all in any shape or form. He's going to probably be super owned, but if you're playing a guy like Cordero Patterson in your captain spot, that probably is enough to kind of differentiate you from a standpoint. That you can only put in so many lineups that you, even with 150 lineups, you still won't be able to put in every single scenario. So I would not be afraid to fade Davante Adams, but at the same time, I think that having him is just going to do, hey, just eat the chalk. He's fine play. It's just a matter of you having your captain spot or not. So I'm not putting him in my captain spot, so I think that he's safe there, not in the captain spot. He's gone basically berserk against the Bears in the past, and some of his last matchups, he's done really well. But the Packers, kind of the question now becomes, do I go with Geronimo Allison we're going to go with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So for me, it's got to be all about Geronimo Allison, and one of the guys on the Fantasy Pros podcast, Mike Tagliere, is actually on Geronimo Allison as well this week, so I really agree with him on that standpoint. So Geronimo Allison basically is going to be the primary slot receiver, the big slot guy for Aaron Rodgers. And according to PFF Scott Barrett, so 25.6% of Rodgers' career targets have gone to wide receivers, to slot wide receivers specifically, with a 111.6 passer rating. That is the highest all-time career passer rating by Aaron Rodgers, is targeting that slot receiver. So you really need to focus in on Geronimo Allison as the main guy because of A, the highly efficiency of Aaron Rodgers targeting the slot, and B, the fact that the Bears are weak at that position at slot corner. They had Bryce Callahan last year. He is gone now. They have Buster Skrine, who was the Jets slot cornerback last year, and let's just say he was not that great last year. According to PFF, so Skrine actually played the 8th most snaps in the slot last year, and he gave up the most touchdowns, 5th most targets and receptions, and the 3rd most receiving yards. So, not good. And also, when Aaron Rodgers has played the Bears in the past, he has heavily targeted the slot. Randall Cobb's best games last year against the Bears. So he totaled 17 targets, 12 receptions, and 152 receiving yards. So these targets are going to the slot position. So I think that if you are going to fade Devontae Adams altogether, Geronimo Allison is definitely the guy that you want to pivot to for sure, because I think it would not surprise me at all to see Geronimo Allison actually have the better game of the two receivers than Devontae Adams on Thursday Night Football. So, and then MVS is just, he's too, inconsistent for me. He's a guy that has to have a big play on the outside, and I just don't see that happening in this game. I would not trust the big play from Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think that he won't have that many targets, so I think it's just Allison and it's Devontae Adams are the two receivers on the Packers that you really want to target in this matchup. And again, like I said, Devontae Adams went bonkers last time they played. He had 8 receptions for 119 yards. So again, he's probably pretty safe as a receiver play. For the Bears, I mentioned Anthony Miller. Not really buying him. I do like Allen Robinson, though. He's probably going to be shadowed by Jair Alexander, so that may warrant some people off because Jair Alexander is kind of an up-and-coming kind of star in this league. But one of the things I'll note about him is that the 2 games that Allen Robinson has played, Jair Alexander has kind of shadowed him for the most part. He has played a lot of coverage on him, but he's had 2 receptions, both over 30 yards. So Allen Robinson has been able to get behind Jair Alexander deep in both games that he's played. He's only had 2 receptions for 63 yards as a total, but he was targeted 3 times. So, again, another guy who can probably make a big play. If there's a Bears receiver that's going to make a big play down the field, it's going to be to Allen Robinson. So, again, why I tend to lean on the Trubisky side of things as opposed to the Aaron Rodgers side in this game. Now going into our favorite position, tight ends. Like I said, Trey Burton does not look like he's going to play in this game. I am fading the tight end position altogether. This is one thing to note for Showdown. Just like tight end sucks everywhere, and it's just like even if Adam Shaheen, is the primary starter, it's just these guys just don't have the upside. Like you just want players that have more upside for a bigger play and can do more than what the tight end position can do. So I'm not playing any tight ends, honestly, and I wouldn't play any tight ends in redraft. I don't like Trey Burton. Jimmy Graham is touchdown dependent. I don't think Rodgers is going to throw a lot of touchdowns in this game. Ergo, you don't want Jimmy Graham, who has literally no yards after the catch whatsoever ability. So fading him as well. And Adam Shaheen, even if he gets the start, I'm not buying into those guys. So they're not projecting any touchdowns. So get out of here with the tight end position. And then lastly, going to kickers, defense, special teams. So something that's overlooked a lot of times in just Showdown because it's like kicker defense, like why would you start those guys that have no upside? But, weird things happen and stuff that you can't predict, and that's kind of where these kind of positions come into play. Kickers are usually pretty safe. They come with a safe floor, so if you're playing again a cash game, you just need points. Okay, go with one for those. But what I would say with the kicker position is Mason Crosby is actually an interesting kicker in this game because if you look at the history, and this is kind of like buying into the fact that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to struggle, but I think the Packers are still going to be able to move the ball through Aaron Jones and through Geronimo Allison. So if that's the case, okay, so what are they going to do with points? So I'm assuming that either, hey, they're going to rush a touchdown with Aaron Jones, or it's going to be the kicking game. So Mason Crosby against the Bears, or actually the last 3 times he's played at Soldier Field, basically he has done really well. He's then converted 8 of his last 9 field goal attempts in his last 3 games at Chicago. So he's basically averaging, at least 9 points a game his last 3 games at Chicago. So, I mean, is it a bold take to say, hey, I think that Mason Crosby could outscore Aaron Rodgers? I mean, it could happen. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw any touchdowns, just throws for like 200 yards, and Crosby hits 4 field goals, then there you go. Mason Crosby outscored Aaron Rodgers just like we all projected it. And just so when you come back and listen to the podcast or see the next video, that's what we're going to look at. So I do like Mason Crosby as the kicker to choose. And then the same thing with the Packers defense. Again, Bears defense I'm concerned about, and Aaron Rodgers just doesn't throw picks. Like, he's not a turnover-prone guy. Whereas on the other side, you have Packers defense. You have a rookie running back that could be seeing a lot of touches, David Montgomery. And you have Mitchell Trubisky, who's just a guy that just is more of a turnover-prone quarterback. So from a defensive side, like the Packers defense, special teams would be one I would also consider in my showdown lineup, because I think that they're the one that's going to create some plays. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video so far. I am really excited about the slate tonight. Thursday Night Football. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. You guys are going to be watching. So please hit me up on Twitter at @AndrewX_. And yeah, so thanks for watching.